Thank you, Senator Moore. Senator Ketter.
Thank you, Mr Acting Deputy President. Mr Acting Deputy President, I speak tonight in relation to the Renewable Energy Target, and I commence my contribution with a quote. "We'll be keeping the Renewable Energy Target. We've made that commitment. We have no plans or proposals to change it. We've no plans or intentions for change, and we've offered bipartisan support to that." End of quote. Those aren't my words, Mr Acting Deputy President. They are the words of the current Environment Minister before the last election in what regrettably went on to become another broken promise from this government. I wish to speak today on a matter of the utmost importance to Australia's economic growth. The increasingly partisan policy being proposed and enacted by this coalition government. This government is making decisions now which will negatively affect the levels of investment in a whole swathe of industries for many years to come. Actions designed to keep a minority of their backers and supporters happy will damage key Australian industries well into the future, long after their period of government has ended. Last Thursday, the government released the report of the expert panel on the Renewable Energy Target scheme. The panel found that the RET has met its objectives. It has encouraged significant additional renewable electricity generation and delivered a significant level of carbon dioxide equivalent savings. Yet, in the face of the objective evidence of the RET's success, which was found by the panel, their recommendations to government basically distill down to two options: scrap it fast or scrap it now. So I intend to make 2 points. To touch on how devastating the report's recommendations would be for the renewable sector, and to highlight how the mixed messages and inconsistency of this government's policies are damaging industries and increasing investment risk. The most recent example of this, the knee-jerk review of the Renewable Energy Target, is a dangerous example of policy made in parallel to reality. It is a review written in reverse, with the desired outcome made crystal clear by the government well before the hand-picked panel set about their work. Since John Howard brought in the RET in 2001, it has gone through 4 elections with support from both sides of politics. The historical bipartisan support for the Renewable Energy Target has led to billions of dollars in investment. Since its introduction, around $18 billion has been invested in Australian renewable energy, and it's estimated that a further $18 billion would be invested before 2020 under the current RET. The additional wind and solar power and energy networks is beginning to drive down wholesale electricity prices. If you scrap the RET, power prices for Queensland families will increase. A report released yesterday by Solar Business Services showed just how wrong the government are on this issue. The research showed that should the government scrap the RET, demand for solar and jobs in solar would both fall by up to 50%. To make matters worse, Queensland leads all other states in solar jobs, and it's estimated that 96% of solar businesses are small to medium-sized enterprises. And Queensland truly is the solar state of Australia. Queensland has more solar generating capacity than South Africa, Mexico, Malaysia, the Netherlands, Taiwan and many other countries. If the government accepts the recommendations in this report, they are anti-small business and they are anti-Queensland. The current government is changing its mind so fast on issues that soon any investment with a lifespan of longer than a month may have to be considered at risk. Damaging reforms to healthcare, education, childcare, financial advice, none of this was canvassed with the public before the 2013 election. A growing renewable energy sector delivers jobs in manufacturing, mining and many other industries, creating export market opportunities, increasing our skills base and contributing towards a clean energy future. The report of the expert panel itself points out that 144 countries have renewable energy targets, and of those, 138 have policy measures in place to support those targets being met. As the government is fast finding out, though, it isn't only the solar and wind energy sectors that would be affected by the enacting of this report. The sugar industry has directly invested over $600 million in expanded cogeneration projects in regional Queensland since the RET was introduced. As the Australian Sugar Milling Council has indicated, and I quote, "The bipartisan supported policy has driven advances in technology and efficiency, refurbishment of milling infrastructure and the creation of new jobs. These significant investments, with a 15 to 20-year payback, increase industry confidence and broader investment across the sugar mills community." The Sugar Milling Council goes on to say that any reforms that seek to lessen the effectiveness of the RET are directly inhibiting further investment of potentially $1.3 billion at existing mill sites and a further $2 to $4 billion in greenfield investments in Northern Australia, particularly Queensland. In my home state, cogeneration at Racecourse Sugar Mill currently contributes the equivalent of a third of Mackay's energy demand for over 50 weeks of the year. Right now this is happening, not in the future, but right now. Importantly, the RET allows Australia to keep pace with international renewable energy policy and not fall behind the rest of the world. As the Sugar Milling Council go on to say, and I quote, "As the international focus on enhancing energy security through renewable electricity and biofuels increases, international competitors are leveraging expansion of their industry through generous renewable energy and biofuel subsidies, generating a step change in the economic profit possible from sugar production. The Australian sugar industry does not have the support of similar subsidies, and the Australian RET is modest in comparison." End of quote. Put simply, the RET in its current form is creating jobs, driving investment and increasing energy security in regional Queensland. I wonder if the National Party senators in the chamber will stand up for investment in the sugar industry in Queensland. My guess is that they won't, but we can only hope. But the lack of any credible replacement for the RET in the report takes this from farce to high farce. The government got rid of an effective and operational carbon pricing scheme. They now want to scrap the RET, and the apparent replacement, direct action, has to be one of the least credible environmental policies in Australia's living memory.
Shame.
A Fairfax Media survey last year of 35 prominent university and business economists found only 2 out of 35 believed direct action was a better way to limit Australia's greenhouse gas emissions than Labor's carbon pricing scheme. The report's reliance on the widely panned and detail-light direct action plan to pick up the slack of a scrapped RET is almost laughable. So on to the broader economic risks that this report presents. The investment risk this government seems to be all too ready to dismiss. But the government has an answer for that too, a change in terminology. And I quote from the report, "The panel considers that the risk of significant policy change is better characterised as regulatory risk and is always present." Yet calling a spade a bucket doesn't completely resolve the issue. As the report goes on to say, and I quote, "The panel recognises that repeal may result in adverse financial implications for existing investors." Mr Acting Deputy President, the current RET policy is working, creating jobs, increasing competition and broadening our electricity supply base. Yet this government would put it all to risk to prop up a small sector of interests. So whilst the government is going over the report, I'd ask them to consider the approximately 24,000 jobs in the renewable energy sector currently on notice, the success of the scheme to date and the risk to investment in Australia they would be creating by going down the murky road this report suggests. In summing up, Australians overwhelmingly support renewable energy. The RET will drive down household electricity prices in the medium and long term. Changes to the RET will force solar small businesses to close and lead to a 40 to 50% decline in jobs in the solar sector. And more than half of Australia's rooftop solar panels are installed in non-metropolitan suburbs and rural and regional areas, with 61% of solar businesses located outside capital cities. The evidence in favour of keeping the RET is overwhelming. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator
yeah.
Ketter.